Welcome to the Therapy by Choice podcast, where we offer educational information on a variety of mental health topics. We speak to specialists in the field, and we answer your questions. My name is Robyne Vance. I'm an associate marriage and family therapist here at Therapy by Choice and your host for this podcast. Therapy by Choice is a private practice with offices located in San Jose and Palo Alto, California. At Therapy by Choice, we provide both in-person and virtual therapeutic services for individuals, couples, and families. People seek therapy for many reasons, whether you are a couple needing more insight into your relationship, a couple on the verge of breaking up, an individual who may be experiencing depression and anxiety or career changes, or families grieving the loss of a loved one or needing guidance. Here at Therapy by Choice, we are skilled and prepared to help in many areas. A listing of our specialties can be found at www.therapybychoice.com and click on Services. We do offer a free 15-minute consultation for you to speak with a therapist to see if therapy and the therapist are a fit for your needs. To speak with us to see how we can meet your needs, please call or text us at 408-786-9651. That's 408-786-9651. Or visit our website at www.therapybychoice.com, where you can read about our practice, the areas in which we offer services, and read about our staff. That's www.therapybychoice.com. Therapy by Choice, helping clients feel better. Welcome to the Therapy by Choice podcast. My name is Robyne Vance. Today's episode is a part of our In the Field series, where we talk to specialists and providers in the field of mental health who can offer insight, expert guidance, and knowledge. Our guest today is Jana Parker, licensed educational psychologist and board-certified school neuropsychologist. Jana is a licensed educational psychologist and the owner of Mind by Design, a multidisciplinary group practice in Campbell, California. Her team specializes in diagnosing and supporting children, teens, and young adults with educational and developmental challenges, as well as supporting their parents. Jana is also the host of the Empower LEP podcast and the Empower LEP platform, where she mentors school psychologists transitioning into private practice. She is passionate about fostering sustainable, impactful careers while delivering exceptional care to clients. Welcome, Jana.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining me. So I do really love a good origin story, and I love hearing how people chose their chosen profession. So what did the journey of becoming a licensed educational psychologist look like for you?
Mm-hmm. Well, when I was growing up, I really wanted to be a dancer, but that did not have the kind of consistency and stability that I wanted for my life. I really wanted something with more security, and I was always drawn to helping professions, and it wasn't really, I chose psychology as a major in college without even like a doubt. Like there was nothing else I was going to study. And then when I was leaving college, my family said, well, if you don't go to grad school now, you're never going to go back. Like, what are you going to do when you graduate college? And I was like, actually, I have no idea. So yeah, I really had no idea I just kind of went straight through high school, straight through college. And then at the other end of it, I was like, I really actually have no idea. So I said, well, I better just keep going to school, right? So I started a clinical PsyD program in like a professional school, because you could get into those real easily because they just want all your money.
Yes.
And so I started that, but I was young, and I realized, I really love psychology, but I don't know that I'm ready for this kind of program, nor do I actually want to be a therapist. Once I got into it, I was like, yeah, I don't think this is what I want to do. But during that program, I was working in a school as a school counselor, like as a practicum, and I found out about school psychology because I realized that there was such a thing because they had one. And I still remember just going like feeling frustrated when I was the counselor in the school, feeling frustrated that I only had a half an hour with this kid and I was just going to put him back in his classroom and in his home environment. And I didn't have enough of an impact that I felt like I wanted to have. And I realized that the school psychologist was somebody who kind of figured out what was going on and then was part of organizing a plan and a team to support that student. So maybe the counselor was on that team, but I realized I wanted to be the organizer of that and trying to figure out what was going on, like an investigator, trying to solve the pieces of the puzzle and figure out what's going to help those students thrive. And so I got turned on to school psychology. So I quit my PsyD program with a lot of debt. Yeah. And I don't know, maybe a year and a half or two later, I was into a school psychology program. So that's kind of fast forward, once you become a school psychologist, after 3 years in California, you have the option of applying for your license to practice in private practice. And it's through the same board as LMFTs.
Yes.
So in California, it's really, I think the reason why a lot of people don't know what an educational psychologist is because they don't exist in a lot of places. But in California, back in 1970, they created the LMFT, the LEP, and it was really to bridge the gap with private educationally related mental health services. And so we have this option to practice privately, which in a lot of other states, you need a doctoral level degree and you need to be a clinical licensed psychologist. And in California, you can be at a specialist level and get your license. So you have to have 3 years of school psychology experience. And then you obviously have to show that you've done all your supervision hours and all the things. But then you sit for the licensing exam. And then you can do private practice work. And it's similar to being a school psychologist, but it's really in the private practice world, which means then you're kind of in between, I think the biggest difference is in schools, we're really looking at how are students eligible for services under the 13 categories of special education. But in private practice, we're doing the same kind of assessment, but we're answering the questions that the parents have about their kids.
Yes.
And we have zero barriers to being transparent and helping families really understand what's going on and what they can do about it. And we don't have the barriers that we had in schools where you can or can't say certain things, or they do or don't offer certain things, so there's a lot more flexibility and transparency and just like authenticity, I feel like, in working in private practice.
I definitely second that emotion.
Yeah.
To circle back around, do you still dance?
I know, I was kind of like, there's my origin story. I was like 10 minutes long. In my head, I dance a lot, ever since I stopped being awake past 8:30 at night, I'd probably say no.
No.
But I got really into fitness, and I did a lot of like teaching aerobics and spin classes and all those kinds of things as I was going through grad school, which felt like dancing to me. And I did a lot of personal training, which felt like teaching to me. And now I'm like very into kind of like physicality. So I still do that, just not dancing. Good
Is
question.
Yeah, definitely thank you also for just providing that clarification about educational psychologists and also school psychologists. I know on this podcast we did an episode on the common types of mental health professionals, and I did not cover that sector of behavioral health. So thank you for educating our listeners.
Yeah, I noticed that. I listened, and that's like common, we're often left out, and it's because people just don't even know we exist. It's a very small field and is one of the least utilized licenses of the Board of Behavioral Sciences because people who have this license are working in schools, so taking the step outside of schools is difficult for lots of reasons. And yeah, so there aren't very many of us, but ever since COVID, it's been a growing field.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
And next, can you tell us a bit more about what went into your decision to name your practice Mind by Design and the significance of that name?
Sure. So, like you said at the beginning, it's a multidisciplinary practice, and I had this vision of creating a team that was really similar to what I worked with in schools. So I got a lot of experience working at a doctor's office with my license and working kind of more on a developmental pediatric mental health team. Learned so much. And I thought, okay, I want to do this same kind of thing, but I want it to be more educationally related. So I want educational psychologists, speech pathologists, maybe an OT, which I don't have yet, but I'd love to have, and educators, right? Special educators and tutors who are helping, so we can help students make educational gains. And I thought I'd originally started my practice with something like with my name, but then I knew, okay, like as I moved from being just a sole proprietor into a corporation and thinking about group practice, I wanted to change the name to something that felt like there's no limit to the growth that the people that we serve can have. And we, by the decisions that we make, we can basically design how like outcomes, right? Like we can design programs to support outcomes. And I had been listening to a lot of podcasts at the time, and I was listening to artists talk. And there was a lot of like their places were called like something something design or something something studio, or it was kind of like creative. And um it so like the word design on Mind by Design, that's how that came about. And and then our logo is a brain that's actually a tree. Yeah, yeah. So because, and sometimes kids go like, oh, is that a tree? Is it a brain? Like, yeah, it's both,
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. And speaking of your website, themindbydesign.com, I really love perusing the website and reading about this interdisciplinary approach you spoke about. Now, it talks a lot about evaluations and assessments. For someone who may not think evaluations and assessments are important to the work with clients, can you talk a bit about the importance of those types of tests?
Absolutely. Yeah. And we have this conversation with families all the time. And, an evaluation is a big thing. It takes many, many hours from everybody. And so we really want to help parents understand what it is and only do it if it's necessary, because there's so many other things that you can do. If you know kind of what the problem is, you can do an intervention at any time, right? Assessments or evaluations is kind of like this term is synonymous, but we're really trying to better understand what is going on to help us target intervention. So it's not like you can't do intervention first, but if you have a better understanding of what's going on, we can then target interventions based on more information, you know?
Yeah.
So there's a couple different reasons that we say, like, to get an evaluation. One is to get more information. Two might be to have a diagnosis. Like, sometimes people need a diagnosis
Yes.
in order to access different things, right? So just because you have an evaluation does not mean you are going to end up with a diagnosis. But if you need one to access accommodations or different kinds of support services, then sometimes it's necessary. But really, a diagnosis is really for two reasons. Number one is to tell insurance companies what it is, you know, we don't take insurance, but we do provide super bills. And sometimes insurance companies will reimburse or will support other therapies once we do an evaluation. And two, it's to inform intervention. You know, it's just a compilation of characteristics that have a name. And because it has like, these are evidence-based, like these are research-based names because people have all these characteristics. There's interventions that work, that are associated, you know, that have been researched to help support those different diagnoses, right? So then that helps inform the intervention.
And I know you're the big boss over there.
Yeah.
But do you have a favorite battery or diagnostic that you like to administer?
Yeah, I mean, I love doing learning disability evaluations. My favorite kind of evaluation is for dyslexia and ADHD a lot too. You know, so I would say like those are my go-tos, and I do, you know, I am the big boss over there, but I do still do the clinical work, and I love it, and I try to find as much time as I can for it. That's really hard. But yeah, I still take a few cases a month, and then I support all of my staff as they're working through their cases too.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So in another life, I work with 0 through 5
Mm-hmm.
and have some experience working with adolescents. In both those populations, the involvement of caregivers such as parents, foster families, etc., can be both necessary and critical to positive treatment outcomes.
Yeah.
At Mind by Design, what role do the caregivers play in various phases of treatment?
It's critical. You know, it's critical, and no one teaches anybody how to be a parent. You know, it is so hard, and it really depends on your kid and what they need. But there are some really basic things that I think are something that everybody can do, and just doing some of these things, I think will support better outcomes. And one is, you know, a couple just literally off the top of my head are, you know, always showing your kids love.
Yeah.
Being there for them, always being a constant in their life, never making them feel like if they do something wrong that you don't, you know, you're not there for them, right? Another is just exposing them to as many awesome things about the world as possible. Like putting phones away and technology away as much as possible when you're with your kids, because their brains are little sponges, and we want them to soak up knowledge of the world, not just of the screen that they're watching. And I would say reading with them is exceptionally important from a very young age, and singing and using language and talking to them, because like learning and brain development and reading, it happens the more exposure kids have to words, to vocabulary, whether it's on a printed page or even just through conversation and communication, the more they're going to be able to make connections with other things that they learn. And those foundational things are just really critical. But the answer to your question, as we move like through all of the years, parents and caregivers are critical. And so when we're working on an evaluation, we are at the end, having a feedback session with parents or caregivers, telling them, this is what we found. These are our recommendations. This is what you can do. And then we make some, like try to make some like, what are you going to do first? Because the evaluation is only as good as the steps that you take after to provide the support. So it's like accountability, right? It's like being a personal trainer. Like you have to inspire people to take a step, and we also have a lot of support services. We have a lot of intervention services. And so my specialists, whether they're working on reading, writing, math, executive function, or speech and language therapy, we're the specialists are keeping parents informed of what they're doing and constantly kind of interacting to make sure that things are being followed throughout home, giving some guidance for things that they can do at home, because it's a system, right?
Yes.
And so, um, so yeah, the parent and caregiver piece is really critical.
And speaking of the system, and you briefly mentioned it, but does the team at Mind by Design coordinate with any other providers, such as primary care physicians or with teaching and counseling staff client visits?
Absolutely. Yeah. For every assessment that we do, we're asking what's going on at school, because I should also say, our evaluations are psychoeducational or
Yes.
school neuropsychological. And so what we're looking at is um, where are the educational breakdowns? And it could be that the grades are slipping. It could be that they're, it could be like actually in the grades, but it could be also that you don't have any issue with how they learn, but they're for some reason not turning in their work or not able to make or keep friends or not able to stay in their seat or, there are so many things that could be going on. And so what we're doing is trying to not only figure out like what is going on, but why is that happening? And we look at all of the different kinds of like functions of the brain and how the interplay is to kind of get that result of what's happening. And then we make recommendations to support that, whether or not it has an actual diagnosis attached to it. And while we're doing that, because we have all worked in schools, so we know how critical it is to communicate with the people who are with those kids day in and day out. And we know that as soon as we get on the phone with a teacher or a counselor, we're going to get some really good information that may or may not be the same information that parents give us, and sometimes parents are a little hesitant. Like, I don't know if we want you talking to the school, but the whole point is like your student has a team. These people are all on your student's team. And our job is to help inform this student's team, how to help, because I don't know, maybe they're at a loss. Maybe they don't know what to do. Maybe they don't know how to help. We support a lot of kids who are in private school, and sometimes they don't have the resources or they haven't had experience with that kind of kid because they don't accept everybody, So sometimes they have an experience that they have not had before, right? And so they say, well, parents, go get an evaluation. But then just because they get an evaluation, it doesn't mean anything's going to change unless we can help teachers make changes in their environment, set them up for success, so we have to make changes both at school and at home. So yes, we try to get as much information as possible from the schools, and then we try to present the information also in ways that their educators will be receptive to it too, right? We really try, in my practice, like there are all different kinds of evaluation reports that people will write. We really try to make ours as digestible as possible.
Yes.
So that people understand, like it's the same information, but we would rather write, 5 good pages of text rather than like 15 pages that are really difficult to read, right? So we just really try to make it digestible because we want it to be user-friendly and written in a way that people can understand and go, oh yeah, okay, I get it. And now this is what we can do about it. So when we're doing an evaluation, we're talking to all the people as long as parents allow us. And then as we're like working cases, whether, if they're having, hourly sessions with us, whoever we need to talk to, whether it's a psychiatrist or the pediatrician or their therapist, we want to be as collaborative as possible because we also know it takes a village, and we all have to on the same page.
I think one of the things most people don't know in the field of mental health is that most providers often serve more than one role. So a therapist may do a lot of case management and things like that. And I find that clients sometimes may not know like the full scope of what a practice can offer and what we as providers can offer. And I know that you mentioned that Mind by Design offers a lot of supportive and ancillary services. How often do you find that it's the client and caregivers asking for those services versus, hey, by the way, did you know we do X, Y, and Z?
Do you mean they're asking for themselves for the caregivers?
Yes.
Yeah, we get that. Probably not like quite as often as parents are calling for something for their kids, but we definitely get those calls. And sometimes it's for parent coaching of just like, how do I support my kid who has ADHD or who has autism spectrum? How do I'm having trouble with parenting them. I don't know how to like set up a system in my house so that we can get him to school on time or get him up in the morning without there being a fight, or help him do his homework without there being a fight, or get him off of his iPad without there being a fight, right? So we get a lot of that. And I have one of my practitioners especially like loves working with parents like that. And then I don't know that we don't get this a lot, but when we do get it, we love it. It's parents who are like, something is going on with the school that I think we've had some kind of meeting. We had an SST. They gave us some paperwork. We're not really sure what happens now, or they're testing my kid for an IEP, but we don't really know what that means. And we're not clear about, just anything, or like, what does this report even mean? We're not sure. So because my psychologist and I have worked in schools for so long as school psychologists, like we understand we know how to navigate that paperwork and that system. And a lot of times parents feel they just don't know, and they feel it causes a lot of anxiety because they're unsure. Someone has said their 5-year-old is having trouble. They're like, oh my gosh, what do I do? What is this? There's all these acronyms. We're not sure how to navigate this. So I call it tier 1 advocacy, like ground level, like, okay, let's just send us just whatever paperwork they've shared with you. I will review it, and then we will have a meeting. You just send me your questions, right? And then let's talk about this. And I want to empower them with more of a knowledge base, and it just lessens their anxiety, right? It's like, here's the knowledge. Now, like, here are some questions you can go ask, because we want parents to feel informed and be able to collaborate with their school team without anybody else coming into that picture for as long as possible. Sometimes parents need professionals to come into meetings with them. We try to give them some ammunition without going in, just so that they feel better about it. And it usually helps so much, like you just know you've helped that parent who's like stressing all day at work, and like super unproductive because they're just like, what is going on with my kid? Who do I even ask? I don't even know what to do. Can I trust the school? Right. And we're very pro public education. Like I think the problem is, it's hard when you're working in that system to remember that parents are so new to it, if they're new to it, and that things really need to be broken down. And if you don't do that as school personnel, then you're going to leave parents in a place where they just feel anxious because they just don't know. And so working in private practice and as a school psychologist at the same time years ago helped me realize how much parents didn't know and needed to know. And it made me a better school psychologist while I was still doing that, right? Because it gave me a different perspective.
Oh, some education for me right there. Thank you for that.
So we do meetings like that. Yeah, we do consultation.
Those are my plus. And I know to segue, a big part of the work I'm sure that you do, I do as well, is psychoeducation.
Mm,
And I know right now we're kind of in a society where, a lot of people have access to information. And, I call it the University of Google and
right.
the Wikipedia Institute of Medicine, and a lot of buzzwords nowadays, ADHD and autism.
Mm.
Can you talk just a little bit about the diagnosable features, symptoms, and characteristics of both ADHD and autism?
Yes, of course. I'm trying to figure out like how detailed do I want to get here. ADHD is, yeah, these are like, it seems like everybody's getting diagnosed with ADHD these days. And um, there has been a rise in autism. And I think there's also been a rise in ADHD. And I think there's also been a rise in people saying they have symptoms when
Yes.
they don't. So, okay, the first thing I'll say is that in order for something to be diagnosed, it has to be really significant. There has to be a substantial life limitation. And for ADHD, it also has to show up before kids are 12. And in autism, it has to show up during the developmental period. So there are kind of some parameters around that. It can't be like, all of a sudden I'm having issues with my attention, right? And there's got to be, if we get somebody saying that and they're like about to go off to college, I don't know, how substantial is that if you got through all of this schooling without needing any kind of special accommodation or support, right? However, sometimes there are people who are late to be diagnosed,
Yes.
who got substantial amounts of support without having a diagnosis, right? So our job when we're looking at it is to really kind of dive into history and really try to understand um, the nature of what's going on for this individual and went on throughout their life. So I always say, like, so with ADHD, it's really, I think, a misunderstood diagnosis. And because it's really not a disorder of attention, it's more of a difficulty attending to things on demand that may not be what the person wants to be paying attention to. It's like a um, it's like not a learning problem, but more of a productivity problem,
Okay.
you know? And so kind of there are two kind of uh, two wings of the criteria. One is a more inattentive presentation, one's a hyperactive impulsive presentation. And so there are things like, difficulty sustaining attention, distractibility, forgetfulness, uh, carelessness, difficulty with like organization. And then there's like on the other side is kind of like a lots of energy, impulsivity, feeling like you're like all revved up all the time. And combined kind of with all of that is we find a lot of difficulty with self-regulation,
Yes.
and other executive skills, which are like, how do you manage yourself? Can you inhibit responses? Can you inhibit those impulses? Can you, shift what you're doing easily? Do you have difficulty with transitions, or shifting off of something that you're really interested in? Do you hyper focus on things and then have difficulty shifting off of that? Do you have a big emotional response when you're told you've got to get off the iPad, and some of these things are very normal. Like there's a lot of like typical, all ADHD is typical behavior. It only is ADHD when it is very limiting. Like if there's a substantial impact of these factors, and to have ADHD, you have to have 6 of 9 of each of the factors, right? So it's kind of a lot, right? So a lot of people have symptoms of ADHD characteristics, but to actually have a clinical diagnosis, you have to meet a certain level of criteria. It has to be substantial and it has to be across settings. It can't just be happening in school or it can't just be happening at home. So there's a lot to ADHD to unpack, but I'll kind of like stop there with that. But those are kind of the key things. And then with autism, we're really looking at, again, both of are an incredibly large spectrum. But we're looking at, difficulty with communication, both verbal and nonverbal communication. So both the communication that you speak and then also body language and picking up on social cues and understanding social perspectives and social awareness. And then there's this other side of it that's more behavioral, and it has to do with like behavioral rigidity and, kind of needing things to be a certain way or having sensory sensitivities or having some kind of, there's a new word for it. It's not some like, I want to say restricted interests, but there's like kind of new strength-based terminology I'm trying to think of right now. But, just like having a real interest in certain things, and it's difficult to kind of get off of those preferred topics. And also some behavioral patterns that people feel kind of like they have to do and that act as like ways to soothe, self-soothe. So there's, again, like kind of a wide spectrum there too. And I think more people are being diagnosed with autism, as we're kind of going through a bit of a movement right now into like a more neurodiversity affirming and strength-based approach to understanding autism and people who are on the autism spectrum. And it's, kind of like looking at things as differences rather than disorders, which I really appreciate.
Yes.
I also, like my, I guess it might be a controversial statement I'm about to make right now, but like, I would say that, what I'm trying to do is find the balance between talking about something in a way where you're like, we have to support this, right? Or the person's not going to have a positive life experience, right? That, and this person also has a lot of strengths, and let's also focus on those, right?
Yes.
But I don't want the other piece to get lost, right, in the language, because sometimes that language is like you don't quite pick up what you're laying down. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it could be like, well, we think it's kind of like report cards, like sometimes report cards I read and I'm like, okay, I know that there's an issue here, but this is like so happy, right? Like, where's the piece about Johnny and this difficulty that we know that he has, right? And so, because I think it's critical that kids get support and the right support as soon as possible and as efficiently as possible. I don't want to wait, So, that's kind of my internal work as we're like kind of shifting into this more neurodiversity affirming lens.
Thank you for that information on those two topics. I know that's going to be helpful to a lot of listeners. So I know knowing where to begin or start to get help is probably undoubtedly one of the biggest obstacles to starting and seeking treatment. And some abandon the process altogether. It can be frustrating. In your field, we talked about some of the common barriers to treatment, but most importantly, what advice would you give to parents, caregivers, families, and individuals?
It's like, take one step. Just take one step. Reach out. Take a step forward, because that's the only way that you're going to get momentum, and nothing will change if you do nothing, So even just taking one step, and then taking the next step, Yeah, there are a lot of barriers to change. It is not easy. And the other thing I would say is just like start early. Like the moment you think like, I might need some help with this, right? Start then. Yeah. Um, we've been supporting a lot of parents of very young kids who are applying to different private schools in the area as like kindergartners or, pre-K. It's crazy. But, um, like, so we've been talking with a lot of young parents, right? And so our goal is, or parents of young kids, that's what I mean. And that's not typically the population of parents that we work with, right? Like typically they're like, I don't know, 5 or 6 and up, but we've been working with kids who are even younger just during this time. And we just want to help set them up for success. They have questions about parenting, and we just want to give them resources to start learning early and not feel like they have to do it alone, right? Like most people are parents, so getting support early and finding, just different parenting groups and things they can learn about, read about. We recommend a lot of books, to help parents just start early, getting on the right track and not feeling like they have to do it alone, or like there's no, support out there, because it's pretty easy to find these days, but you have to be consistent.
I'll have to pick your brain too on some good reading material.
Yeah, sure.
All right. And I know we also have something else in common. You also have a podcast. Can you tell us more about your podcast and what type of listening experience can we look forward to?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I have 2 podcasts actually.
Mhm.
Yeah. One is the Mind by Design podcast, which started with a different name. And it started during COVID, and I just started interviewing people similar to what you're doing. I just started having all my networking meetings on Zoom and thought, well, I should just put these up on my website because, um, if I want to know who this person is, and I'm going to refer this person from a family to this person, whether it's a therapist or a speech therapist or just any kind of practitioner, I thought, you know, it would be great for them to hear this too, right? So I started doing those kind of networking interviews, and I have them up on my website, and then somebody can look and be like, oh, like I do kind of think I might like that person. It just kind of like makes it a warm introduction, kind of like this, right? Like if
Yeah,
somebody came to my clinic, they'd feel like they already knew me, right? So I haven't kept up on it a ton, but I still have it up because once in a while I interview somebody from a school, or a lot of the networking now is happening back in person, which is great. I
that's
love.
wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. But when we do stuff online, I think, let me put this, are you okay with that? Put this up. And then we just throw it up there. And that way people like can access a nice chat with a helping professional. But my main podcast right now is called Empower LEP. And I have this other platform that I run that supports people who do what I do in making that shift from working in schools to private practice. And it's a big transition. I was really fortunate because I got experience working in somebody else's clinic for almost 7 years before I started my own practice. It's not something that, should be taken lightly, right? And so I thought, I could really support people. Now that I've been doing this a long time, I can support others in making this transition, because a lot of school psychologists right now are burnt out,
Yes.
especially coming back from COVID. They're feeling stuck and overworked, and it's ruining their quality of life. So the platform is to support people who are thinking about making that shift, but the podcast is mostly interviewing other people in my field who are just doing something different, whether it be their LEPs working doing a private practice, or they have some really awesome support thing online, like a platform, AI, researchers, teachers, test developers, professors, um, people who are doing something in this field, but a little bit innovative and different. And it's inspiring other people to just think outside of what they're doing day to day. Because to use your license as a licensed educational psychologist, you don't have to go do your own private practice. There are lots of different things that you can do. You could work for somebody else. You could contract with agencies. You could contract with school districts. You could do independent educational evaluations, which are, what happens if a public school does an evaluation and parents don't agree with it. They can ask for a private evaluation at public expense. So there are a lot of, and people are, making really cool resources for parents or creating curriculum for social emotional learning. Like there are all these different things. And I think that even if someone just thought, I just want to use my license to do something outside of schools a little bit, maybe that's what is filling their bucket enough for them to keep doing the good work that they're doing in schools, because we need to keep the school psychologists too, right? So I'm not trying to get everybody to leave schools and like leave the field, but I am trying to just help people find their passion and their purpose in life and hear from other people who are sharing their experiences on the podcast. And then I also share some things that are like business related and clinically related so that people can kind of hear what are the kinds of things that I'm going through as a small business owner, as a, psychologist turned entrepreneur, which I never thought, would happen. I wanted the consistency, and now I'm like not doing that at all. And yeah, just helping to help other people grow. Because if they do decide they want to do their own private practice, they're going to need some guidance, right? Like they didn't go get supervision to be a private practice psychologist. They went through that to be a school psychologist. So it's kind of like, how do you then work clinically, right? You've got to do some homework. So I'm there for mentoring and coaching and stuff for them too.
A lot of homework. Totally agree. And how can our listeners get a hold of you and the team at Mind Bites?
Great question. So our website, like you said, is amazing. So you can go to themindbydesign.com. Don't forget the in it. It's themindbydesign.com. We have a really great contact form there that goes like straight to us. So if you fill out that contact form, like you will be communicated with within the day or the next day. We have a you get an email after that says, if you like, if this can't wait, just schedule a time to talk right now. And you can schedule a time on my admin's calendar, or you can just pick up the phone and call. And if she's not on another line, she will answer the phone. So our number, I'm sure you'll put it in the show notes, but in case people are listening, is 669-282-2510. And they can also just email info@themindbydesign.com.
Very easy. And definitely in the podcast description, you guys will find the link to the website as well as links to the podcast as well. So I wanted to thank you, Jana, for just taking time out of, I know you have a very busy schedule, so definitely thank you for taking some time to meet with me. Before you go, I like to do a little segment called Robyne's Random Reflections.
Okay.
And I'm always having, I'm a pretty deep thinker. I'm always having like occasional random musings and just odd thoughts. So I'm always interested to know how others might answer those questions I
Okay.
have. So your random question is, the good folks of planet Earth have decided to get rid of one primary color, red, yellow, or blue. What color would you get rid of?
Red.
Red. That was a fast answer.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Not not maroon, but red.
Red.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I don't know why. It just was literally the first thing that came to my mind that was just instinctual. I don't really have a good answer.
There's only 3 choices, so
Right.
it's got to be one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want another question. Give me another Robyne's music.
Yes, let's give you another question. What is a song that no matter what you're going through or what type of day you're having, always puts you in a good
Okay, that's really funny. Okay. Today Was a Good Day from Ice Cube.
It was a good day. That's actually pretty interesting.
Isn't it? It takes me back to like high school. I don't know. I loved that song. And yeah.
It's a classic.
Yeah.
Well, I've learned something new as well. Well, I want to thank my guests, and we want to thank you, the listener, for joining us for this episode of the Therapy by Choice podcast. Don't forget to like and share this podcast, and feel free to reach out if you have a question or if you'd like to request a specific topic to be covered. You can text us at 408-786-9651 or email us at robyn@therapybychoice.com. That's Robyne, Robyne, @therapybychoice.com. Also visit our website at www.therapybychoice.com. My name is Robyne Vance. Take good care. While we hope to provide insight and education, our podcast does not replace therapy, and listening to our podcast does not establish a therapeutic relationship. If you or someone you know are in crisis, please call the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline by dialing 988.